Exactly. This is a complicated world, and simple answers or no answers, which is your point. Why can't, though, and then General to you, why can't we get our politicians to tell a story, to come up with a narrative? Throughout history, people have done this. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt explained the Depression, which was complicated in many ways to Americans, that they did endure pain, shared pain for shared gain down the road. Truman explained the Cold War and why we're going to bother with Europe, even though it wasn't popular at the time to have that opinion. Eisenhower explained why there needs to be limits to military spending, but that it's really important. You can do these things, but I don't see efforts, as you say, being made to do them. I don't see Mrs. Merkel holding press conferences to explain what you just said very eloquently. Panel, why is this? Why aren't we bothering to explain? Isn't this part of leadership? Or even followership is to listen, and people may not want to. But if you don't put forward arguments, as you say, then it will only be the preserve of an elite. And that is dangerous for business in a democracy. So why is this? Why is no one bothering to stick their head above the parapet and say, look, I don't like what the bankers did either, but I like that my bank card works, and so we have to do some bailouts and have some pain in order for the system to go so down the road we all can have prosperity and the things we like in the West. Why is no one doing that? Rem, to you and then the General.
Well, I can take a shot at it. I don't have the solution, but one of the things that I see is that we talked about leadership and followership, but you see this trend as a result of the introduction of new media technologies. There's a new relationship developing between the government and the governed. And one of the consequences of that is that government has become much more direct in liberal democracies, and that's a good thing. The bad thing, and something that we still have to grapple with, is that it is turning politicians much more into followers than it is into leaders. The way I understand political leadership is that you lead public opinion. You lead it through tough times and you lead it through good times. But what you see right now in the knee-jerk reaction as a response to the complexity of a multipolar world and an inward-looking and a confused electorate is that politicians have decided to take the short-term gain over the longer-term loss, and have decided to become followers of that public opinion rather than to say perhaps the truth, but also the electorally negative position of sticking their neck out. And I think that's a Western predicament. It's also a complete function of being a status quo continent or being a status quo power. These are logical responses that they create. But it is absolutely a show of the time. So I'm not offering a solution out of it. I mean, there have been ample magazine articles that have called for where is the Helmut Kohl of this generation, and I don't know. I can't say where he is to be found, or she.
Helmut Kohl is a wonderful catchword. If we take the present crisis, the euro is to some extent the idea of Helmut Kohl. He wisely never dared to put the decision on the euro to the electorate. He had known exactly that he would never win this vote. And for that reason he took a decision whose democratic values you can doubt, but it's there. And I think it brings us back to one of the crucial issues of our days. Our system is based on the fact that our politicians have to convince the voters, they have to explain to the voters what they are doing in order to win their trust and then to achieve their main objective, that is to be re-elected. Today's situation can no longer be explained. Mrs. Merkel won today the vote at the Bundestag with an overwhelming majority. But it could well be, and Erik knows it better than I, that this decision will be invalid in a fortnight's time, may be overtaken by someone who we do not know who it is. So I think we have to reflect on the potential consequences. If we continue like we do right now, we prepare the field for demagogues, for nationalists, and for a renationalization not only of Europe, but also in the United States. The situation is not so much different there. So the politicians do not have too much of the confidence of the voters any longer as well. And your country is more divided than it ever was before. I think it is an extremely dangerous situation in which we are. And for that reason, I fear that this financial crisis may have the potential of becoming a crisis of democracy. And for that reason, I think we really need to reflect what should we do next.
Erik?
I couldn't agree more with the General's comments. The watchword is managing expectations. And we have so mismanaged expectations within the electorate and so paved the way for populist demagoguery that it's just astonishing. In the context of the Euro, I always point to Lamberto Dini's speech to the European Parliament when he was president of the Council of Ministers, where he said, we have to convince the people, this was in 1996, there's flagging popular support for the euro, we have to convince the people that monetary union will mean more jobs. There was not a single economist I worked with in the middle of the 1990s that saw any relationship between monetary union and employment creation. And yet the idea that we could make this relationship and get political mileage out of it was so seductive that we ended up pushing this idea that European integration would resolve the unemployment problem. And for a very important period in the early 2000s, that almost wiped out popular support for European integration. Mm-hmm. We could see the same thing in the United States. I think one of the biggest challenges that Barack Obama faces in his bid for re-election is the rhetoric that he used when he got elected in the first place. The fact is, he's had a very active government. But how can you ever live up to the promise of hope and change?
The seas parting and all that, yes. Yes.